Hello, widowhood. My friend Marketta is here continuing to share her journey with us. And as she ended that last episode, that was the beginning of her being in the widowhood. And we are going to pick up and continue sharing where her journey went and where it is now today.
Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner. Share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Tina.
So you step into widowhood. And where do we go from there, Marketta?
Pregnant and lonely. From the time he passed up through homegoing celebrations, the funeral, all the beginning things, or the ending things, I should say. There are tons of people around all the time. People bringing food, consoling, saying helpful things, saying ignorant things. Like everyone is around. My neighborhood even started a food train for me. They signed up for different days, and I wasn't I wasn't mean, but I wasn't the friendly neighbor. Danny would come home and, hey, Mr. Davis, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. I'd come home and bolt in the house. Like, I'm off work. I'm done peopling for the day. Don't talk to me. So once this happened, none of that mattered. My community is very diverse, so I got to try so many different foods. At this point, I still was just so far gone. The base, his unit, they had a babysitting train is what I call it. I was never left alone, at least for the first 2 or 3 weeks. One person would come in, stay a designated amount of hours, then another person. I remember there was a gap one time and no one was there. And I flipped all the way out. I wasn't scared of being in the house where he died. I was scared of being there without him. And I called my mom. No one's here. They said they'd be here. What do I do? And I'm screaming. And so she gets a hold of someone in the unit. They were just running behind. That's all. And she finally made it. She brought her daughter. Everyone was just so sweet and treaded very lightly for the most part. And then after all of that dies down, we're stuck in this alternate reality while everybody else gets to go back to their life.
May I ask, how did this trigger or impact your depression and bipolar and everything else?
So, as it turns out, the type of wonderful medication that I'm on is not very baby friendly.
Exactly.
So, I had been off my medication since we started trying to get pregnant in 2014. The whole time. So, Danny was left to fend for himself when it came to taking care of my ass. It was hard. It was a very hard journey. They offered to put me on baby safe medications, but I was like, nope, there's already enough risk. No, I'm going to push through this non-medicated. And Danny's like, you know,
Danny in the back talking to the doctor. Forget what she said. This
and we slip a little something into something like
like put it in the peanut butter like you get to the doctor.
have this biscuit, they're so yummy, right?
Exactly.
So I'm on nothing but prenatals at this point, and it was hard. But here's the but. I had what my friends dub a unicorn pregnancy. No morning sickness. My feet swelled once at 8 months. No mood swings. I was barely hungry. I could barely eat. My healthy weight is about 175. I got down to 160 before the baby started growing. All I could eat was salads and potatoes. I just had none of the typical symptoms of pregnancy. I wasn't uncomfortable unless her stingy ass was hungry and she made sure I knew. The stomach cramps were ridiculous. Like, I'm getting food. Can you just pipe down? But other than that and mild heartburn, it was like, and outside of the obvious, it was an easy pregnancy physically. So I think me not being on medication, but having those other happy hormones from the baby floating around, I managed. I had the grief, obviously, but I didn't have any like diagnostic bipolar episodes. It was all the grief. So I managed, and it was hard for me to get back on the medication because they wanted to put me back on it when I was breastfeeding, and I was worried, but I did it. They're like, it's going to be now that she's not, in vitro, or in utero, whatever they call it. It's safe. You're fine. And so I did it for her because it went downhill fast postpartum wise. But during the pregnancy, I was okay as far as my diagnosis. So yeah, that's the medical part.
Who was there when your daughter was born, and what is her name, if you're willing to share?
Like her legal name or what I call her under my breath?
I mean, it's your podcast. Say what you want to say. You just called her your stingy ass, so maybe that's what you've been calling. I don't know. That's her name forever.
My husband was very close with his grandmother, as was I. His grandmother's name was Lily, and my grandmother's name was Risa. They had both passed by this point, so we were going to call her Lillian Risa Davis. That's what we were going to call her, and I was going to nickname her Lily Pad.
I saw that coming.
My little lily pad.
Yes.
Danny said that was gay. No offense to gay people.
Because her brother, we all know people who are gay.
My gay brother says that's gay, so I get it from him.
Okay, thank you. I wanted you to clarify that. I wasn't sure if we could say that part. Go ahead.
My gay brother says that's gay. So after Danny passed, clearly that name was not good enough for me. So my husband, Danny, Danny, I named our daughter Danny, Danni. And then I combined our grandmother's names for her middle name, Lily Risa. So that's her name, Danny Lily Risa Davis.
How is it to say her name, but saying his?
I thought it would be a problem.
Okay.
I thought it would be hard for me and for everyone. But she's such a miracle. Not to say I don't think about my husband, obviously, when I say her name, but she's her own little miracle. So it's not hard to say her name and know that it's just her.
What do you mean by miracle?
Well, it took us 3+ years to conceive her, and I had a miscarriage before her. So not only is she my rainbow baby, she survived my grief. She is, in my eyes, like a literal walking, talking miracle.
Did she rescue you in this?
That's an understatement. There were so many times during my pregnancy, the only thing I prayed for was for God to take me and her away so we could be with Danny. I remember I got into one near accident. It would have been really bad. I wasn't shaken. I was like, damn, missed opportunity. It was that sort of thing.
But I want to say this. I don't know anyone whose spouse is no longer here had a sense of not wanting to be here. There's a difference between actively having the tendencies or taking action to remove yourself but the idea of existing in this world without them seems unbearable, and it seems uncomprehendable. And the idea of thinking, I wish I just didn't have to endure this pain and go through this in their absence is such a common thought. People may not talk about it because when you talk to somebody that's not in this journey, they feel like you feel like taking yourself out. Totally different scenario. Most people, not that some don't, but most people are not actively trying to remove themselves. It's just the concept of existing apart from them seems like, I don't know what you want from me, like world, like you want too much. You want too much.
I want to clarify for me, that is absolutely the case. However, you asked me if Danny, my daughter, who when I'm talking about both of them, I call her Danny girl. So we know the difference. So
Yeah.
you asked me if Danny girl rescued me. I feel the way that you described just then, but if it wasn't for her, I know for a fact that I would have actively unalived myself. I'm not afraid to admit that. I already knew sleeping pill, split wrist, something where I could just peacefully go
Uh-huh.
because I couldn't.
But you
I
didn't.
couldn't. She saved my life.
Yeah.
Literally, she saved my life. And one day I'll tell her the story of how, because
How
that's
old
a
is
lot
she?
to put on somebody.
Okay. How old is she now?
For.
And what is parenting like a 4-year-old?
Let me just first say that breaking generational curses is hard.
Oh, what does that mean?
I'm sure that our African American viewers can relate to, especially our age and, older, the type of.
I'm talking about your age or older, because remember, I'm like your mama age.
That's what I'm saying. So my age and older.
Oh, okay, because I'm like,
You look my age and age, you know,
am
don't
I
age us.
not your
You look
mama
good.
age?
I mean, I wasn't gonna say it. Um,
I'm
but
okay. What?
just own it. Own it. Parenting for us in the Black community was a little bit different than it is now. Um, Physical discipline was what it was. That's how they were raised. So that's how they raised us. I wanted to try something different. Millennials now are coming out and talking about their trauma. That's what our therapists are labeling it.
I'm sorry.
But
Did I
I
roll my
will,
eyes? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
just a tad. I will say there are some things because of the way we were raised and the discipline that we received that stuck with us. And there are parts of us that were damaged. And it wasn't talked about as much back then because physical discipline was the norm, right? And I'm not blaming my mother at all. She did what she knew
Right.
and she worked with what she had. But when you know better,
You
you
do.
do better. And now I know better. So
But old people are very helpful with potty training.
listen, thank you. Just bill me. Can you do that?
I just
Just
want
bill.
to say this sometimes because so we're gonna have a little bit of fun. So I'm there visiting, and we're like, we need to potty train Danny, and I'm like, this is what you need to do. You're like, that's so harsh. I don't know if I want to do that. Then I get a phone call. You're like, what am I supposed to do? I'm like, I guess I'm gonna start using your mom's term. I guess you're not tired enough.
If that don't fit right now.
Because when you got tired enough, you said, hold on, what'd you say to do? I can't remember the part where I told you to put her in the tub to clean. Okay, talk about that.
Listen, my dear friend Tina, gentle parenting, what? This is what you need to do and it'll fix it. Okay. You put the gentle parenting on hold just for a second, just in this area. Okay. When she starts messing on herself, she did it. She should clean it. You throw her little behind in that bathtub and you make her clean the mess and we'll see how long she keeps doing it. And you know what I did? I put her little behind in the bathtub and made her clean herself and see how long she did it. In a week or so, she had it. She thought it was disgusting.
That was the best gentle parenting advice I could come up with. I thought that was covering all the things. I was like, I know you want to stay true to the gentle parenting. So let me give a scenario that fits that.
And it's like you met me in the middle
You were
because I
appalled.
could see, I was like, but she's my baby. I can't. But when I got tired enough, and that was a wake up call for her, she was like, clean myself.
I wish
This
I
is
could see the
Dookie.
video to see her face. And then she was
This
like,
is,
Auntie Tina made this happen.
this is, you want me to, like, mom? No, that's not how this works. And I have her in the bathtub and I'm like, waiting. And she's like, I said, how does it feel? You know, it took about a week and smooth sailing, an accident here or there sometimes, during the nighttime or whatnot. But let me tell you, my dear friend Tina, it worked. It worked. I was tired enough for it to work. And honestly, if you want to be real about it, that was gentle parenting.
It was.
I didn't physically discipline her. I talked to her. I explained the thing. So old school and new school mixed up equals no more shit in your pants.
because we kept trying every hour and doing everything else. And then she was holding it. She was doing all that. I was like, you know what? We're going to give her some of this work. And when she had to get up in there, game changer. We had all this
I was
stuff.
tired. I was tired enough.
Yeah.
So just bill me.
So,
Thanks.
but that also community, what would you say someone that is isolated in their grief? I was doing a TikTok live earlier today. I was juicing, which I haven't told you I started doing. I made some juice. One was pineapple and ginger, and the other was red and orange beets, carrots, and apple. And the conversation today was like starting your morning without your spouse or lack of community. And one of the things that I find that happens when you're grieving, it is extremely difficult to do things by yourself that you did with your spouse. And that's anything. I'm talking going to the grocery store that you used to go to. I'm talking about
Ooh.
getting in the car without them. I'm talking about getting in the bed without them. Somebody that is going through all of that and they don't have community. In this regards, I'm going to say they don't have community of somebody else that is a widower and they are doing it isolated. What would you say to them? The difference of having a community of people and not. And I want to say between the person that introduced me to you and myself was probably the gateway to you really opening up. Or am I wrong?
Um, you guys definitely the dam broke.
Okay. And so you can
Yeah.
see what it looked like before and after. What would you say to the difference of that?
Invaluable. I mean, sometimes I find that most times I have more support from people I have not even met in person. As long as they're part of this widowhood community, we understand one another. It's been amazing. The club sucks. The members, though, hot fire. And they're top
Yes.
notch, like top tier, you know? And I will say something my husband used to tell me, especially when I was in a really, really dark, deep episode. And sometimes these episodes could last from 1 week to a month, just completely zoned out in the dark, literally and metaphorically. He would say, Kita, you can visit the dark place, but you can't stay there.
Mm.
And that carries over to my grief. And so I would tell others when you're thinking about community and going it alone, even when you have that community, sometimes you fall back into the dark place where you're isolated. It's okay to visit it, but you can't stay.
How do you prevent yourself from staying? What do you set up? How
Ooh.
do you make that happen?
For me personally, it's my daughter. She
Okay.
won't let me stay. But outside of that, Danny wouldn't want me to stay. He would want me to get up and try to keep living. And it sounds so cliche. It
No, but you're
does,
you're living off of his love and not off the moment of his death.
that part. And I tell a lot of widowers and widows I meet that the grief is hard, but take it as a sign that love existed. Own it. Because if you didn't love the person, who would give a shit? I mean, you wouldn't be grieving them so hard. But that grief is proof that love was there and love is still there. So you don't move on. I hate that phrase. You got to move on. You'll move on. Moving on signifies you ending something and starting something new, leaving that part behind. We don't move on. We move forward. We don't forget what we had. This is a part of us, this person and the experiences we went through with them. That's part of who we are. It's part of our makeup. We don't move on from that. Grief is not something you're like, okay, I conquered that. Time to move on with no. You pick up this grief, this love, this proof of love, and you move forward with it. And this is in a new job, a new love, a new child, a new location. It goes with you. It follows you for the rest of your life. You don't move on from it. You pick it up. And if you move to a different location, you put it in your little grief suitcase. Because why would you want to leave it behind? It's love. Grief is the price of love.
Mm-hmm.
And you honor that person and the love that you had by owning it. You don't become the grief. It's just a part of you. You pick it up and you own it, saying, I love this person. I always love this person. That's why I'm grieving and I'm sad and I get upset and I get angry. But you carry it with you and you learn to live beside it. You
Mm.
learn to live with it. I've found that fighting it just makes it worse.
Girl, it will hunt you down. You over there trying to dodge. It's like when I'm right here. Just go on and do that. I mean, keep trying to visit, try to travel, try to do all that stuff. But when you come home, be sitting here, the mail's here and so am I. I'm going to share something Coach Britt shared with me as far as how not to get stuck in the darkness. And she said, give yourself 24-hour periods. And what that 24-hour periods every 4 hours to check in with yourself. So if you wake up 8 a.m. and you barely got out to go pee, like that's all you did, and you crawled back into bed and you are just lamenting. Then in 4 hours, check in with yourself and go, okay, what are we doing now? What can we do? And so because sometimes when you're in that dark space, time just erodes and you don't have a concept of how much time has gone by.
Right,
And so
right.
then you go, it's been 4 hours, it's been 8 hours. And within 24 hours, say, okay, in 24 hours, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. Maybe it's take a shower because I know I did not shower for quite a while. So maybe I'm going to go out and pick up food versus have it delivered. But in 24 hours, give yourself a mile marker of something you're going to do to come out of that space. And you may stay out for 24 hours, you may go back in, but you may go out longer for the next 24 hours to 48 hours. But it is important to be able to have some place that I don't get stuck there. Because another thing you mentioned, I think people only equate grieving to being sad. Grieving can be while we're happy too.
Mm-hmm.
Grieving can
Mm-hmm.
be in the joyous moments where there becomes a point where, for me, Mark's death was bigger than everything. And then it became a point, like I couldn't remember the happy times. I couldn't remember the joyous moments. All I remember was my experience of him on that table and his death. But there became a point that that was a place I visited those memories, but it became more of all the wonderful memories we had. And when we're able to get to that space, to be able to remember that bigger than that moment of him no longer being here, I think grief changes the way we manage it. The tricky part of that is when people see us, they think, oh, she's done with that now. And as you said, Baby, I am never done with that. It's just how I live with it in a
Hmm.
different way. Now you mentioned something about new love because I know everybody want to know she young. What that mean?
Let me tell you, I had no intention of dating. And my therapist, the first time she mentioned it, she almost got fired. I was like, no, um, my dead husband's insurance is not paying you to counsel me on a potential new love. So we can just move on to the next subject, or I can move on to a next therapist.
Fair.
Next, like, you know? But then I met someone who was also a widower of sorts. Him and his wife had divorced, but were trying to reconcile when she passed.
Oh, that what you mean widows of sorts. I was like, hold on, hold on. Okay.
We weren't the same type of widow. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
Um, they're just, everybody grieves differently and everybody's journey is different. His journey was different.
Did you have this
And
concept because he was a widow or is did his
absolutely.
okay. You
And I've
what
also,
was I gonna say? You said absolutely. No. You thought he was gonna see it the same way you saw because y'all both okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I've learned from so many other widows and widowers just because someone else is widowed does not mean y'all have the same journey. It does not. It doesn't mean that they'll understand your grief. Sometimes they'll be widowed as well, but don't understand why they're jealous of your dead person. Like it's
Because
not always.
because they're the same person they were before well, I should say that. We we have some of those same basic characteristics. Okay, case in point. If I was a liar before Mark died, I'm probably still going to be a liar. If I was stealing or if I was compassionate, some of those characteristics remain the same. But we do have a tendency to let our guard down when we hear somebody is a widow and think that we're
Yes.
all doing this alike. But then we have to find out the character of a person. But I will also say this, there are a lot of things about me that from the experience of Mark's death, I am not the same that I showed up in the world
Absolutely. Hmm.
because they're just life is more precious. It is more it's fragile, and I'm aware of that. When somebody says we don't have tomorrow, I'm like,
Really? Well, let me tell you about that.
exactly. But you're right. Everybody is not the same, and everybody doesn't see it the same. So you dated Mr. Widow or Ishi, Mister, and that didn't go well.
We tried. And, like I said, I'm a serial monogamist. Even after my husband passed, I did not change. So I was like, this is a one and done. Like, if this doesn't work, maybe I'll try dating women. Maybe it'll be different that way.
I
Like,
hear okay, for real. I hear a lot of women say that, like, you know what? I'm just gonna go.
mhm,
That is a common thread. So let me
it
ask
is.
you, when you dated Mr. Widower guy, how long was that after Danny transitioned from this world?
I think it was either 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
It was not right away by any means. But I had met this person when I was 20 weeks pregnant. That's when we first met.
Okay.
And so there was a break in between where, my pregnancy and I went to New York for a while, family staying for an
Right.
extended period, where we did not speak. And then our paths crossed again and things just kind of blossomed. But once we got serious, my husband, he set the bar pretty high,
Mm.
especially after my bad relationships in college. So I tried to upgrade this man. I tried to be like, listen, do you want to be the best? Because I can help you. I know what the best looks like, and I need the best. So if you're a one and done, we need to make you the best.
Mm.
That was wrong of me. That was wrong on so many levels. And I had trouble just accepting the fact that we weren't a good match because I just was like, I'm not going to keep, I'm not about that dating scene. I wanted another fairy tale. If it was going to happen, like I met this guy, and then the first guy after my husband passed, and we just fell madly in love. And it was then I knew that, you could have a second chance at a beautiful love. No, I met this man after my husband passed. It didn't work because he was a penis head. And
I think the other word would have sounded better. That sounds more gross.
it did, didn't it? He was a dickhead, you guys. I'm sorry. It's not that
The
he was a
dating pool was
dickhead.
trash.
No, the dating pool was a piss pool, is what it was.
Okay, so let me talk about a couple of things you just said. You said that Danny set the bar. How does one date and know what they want and not just comparing them to your deceased husband? How does anybody win that game? How does one dating navigate that?
I really can't speak for anyone else's experience other than my own.
True.
So I will say that you can't get around comparing.
Really?
You can't.
Okay.
But just because you compare doesn't mean you have to turn that person into your deceased spouse. It doesn't mean you have to make your new person feel bad about the things that they are different from what it just simply means for me, they literally are just comparisons. Like, oh, my husband used to do that. Oh, my husband, he had your same opinion. It just comes up naturally. You
Right.
spent an entire lifetime with this person. It's gonna happen, but it doesn't mean you have to be a jerk about it.
That's fair.
Like, but that's why I found it much more easy to date someone who was also a widower. I mean, a real widower. Well, you know what I mean.
Okay, so was there a widower after what Mr. Widower? No, is she guy?
Yes.
Do tell.
And so I decided that I would release my inner demons on TikTok.
Let's talk about that. And what does that look like on? Oh, you're on TikTok. Oh, and where can we find you? What is your handle on TikTok, and how does your releasing look? What does that look like?
Well, I welcome you to visit my TikTok page. My name is Literal Black Widow. Should not be hard for you to forget that because that's what I am. I'm literally a Black Widow. It was fate that name wasn't taken. But be warned, if you don't mind having your space in heaven occasionally pushed back, then
That is
please feel
not
free to
true.
join. Look, you're going to fight for your place in heaven
No,
sometimes.
you're not. No, you're not.
I am all about dark humor. I don't like being vulnerable all the time. It makes me uncomfortable. And so the way I deal with that is through dark humor. I do have content on my page where I'm being real and raw. I cry, I scream, I show you what's really going on.
Then she takes it down within an hour. No.
Shh, I only did that once. Um, but for the most part, I'd like to consider my page a reprieve, a place where you can just take a quick break from
People like me.
I wasn't going to say it.
But it is. It's like, oh, you're like, okay, Tina. It's still all relevant, but I
Yeah.
think I have
Yes.
I have dipped my toe into dark humor, and I've been taught well.
So proud of you. Ah. But that's how I cope. And my therapist, to be honest, she worries about that sometimes. She just wants to make sure that I'm not masking my grief so that I'm dealing with it and I'm facing it and I'm working through it. And it's okay to have dark humor on top of that. And I do feel like that's important. I don't want anybody to think that my content means I'm not grieving in any traditional ways, especially being in a new relationship. I definitely don't want people thinking that I don't still grieve. I still have moments where I break down. My husband passed July 17th. Memorial Day marks the sucky summer of how I became a widow. My miscarriage, his passing, all of that, his birthday, our anniversary. So I still go through those sad, unbelievable, unbearable, paralyzing moments. And I always will. And once you accept that, it's kind of like this weight lifted because you know it's going to happen. My therapist described it as the tide. And she said the tide, it always comes in and out. And that big grief tide, sometimes it'll be high, but then it'll pass and it'll go back out. So the longer you stay in this journey, unfortunately, you can sometimes tell when the tide is about to roll in. The anniversaries, the holidays, the birthdays, Don't get me wrong, you've got that ambush grief that gets you if you run across a birthday card or hear a song on the radio, that happens. But you learn to cope with your grief in the way you need to when you see that tide rolling in. Another good way she described it as is your life is a box, right? And it's easier when you see it drawn out, but your life is a box and grief is like a little circle on the inside. Sometimes that circle is so big, it covers the entire box but the corners, and you can hardly move. It's all consuming, it's paralyzing, but you still have a little space in the box, right? And sometimes it's like a little marble where you're going through your day to day and the grief still exists. It's going to exist, but it's just small at that time. But that ball inside that box of your life that is grief, it is always going to exist. Sometimes it's just bigger than other times. So you learn to manage it in whatever way you need to. And for me, it's dark humor. And like I said, my husband and I, we were dark. We were always dark beforehand. That's why we were best friends and we went together so well. So I know that if I had to be grieving, he would want me to do it this way,
Do
our
you have a
way.
favorite video of all your videos? Like when you look at you like that is not the favorite views, but the one that like is there one or two you just go, that I love that one. And it's kind of funny to be kind of hyped about it, but we do. It's like, and I'm gonna just tell you the amount of time that Marquita spends editing, lining up the music and the words. I'm exhausted. I'm like, just post the thing. I can't take it anymore. Like I just cannot. But it is pristine when she does it and she puts her whole heart and soul into it. So
Thank
you have to
you.
have one or two that's just like your favorite, like that came out and lined up the way you wanted, not views, but just your satisfaction.
Listen, if I got views for how many times I went back and watched my own stuff, it would be unfair because I am proud of it. And sometimes I need to laugh too. So then I go back and I'm like, oh, why did you do that? I like my first one a lot. My
Okay.
very first video. I was a content stalker for the longest time on TikTok. I had no content. My therapist, being a journalist, she wanted me to write, and I just wasn't ready. And so I thought TikTok could be a good place for me to start, getting my feelings out. It was a good medium and, everybody was into it. It was hip. So I watched for a little while. And then I went out to the cemetery for, I think it was Veterans Day. And at the time, I told you I was babysat even after my baby was born. So my brother was living with me at the time for a year. And we were out at the cemetery and he was like, you should do a TikTok video out here. And he was joking. And I was like,
Mm.
no, I'm dressed up. I got my nice, pretty dress on and my wig. Why not? So I did. And I'm just sitting there with him behind me, his headstone. And you only see me at first. And I say, hey guys, I'm just out here having lunch with my husband. How was lunch, honey? And then I pan over to his headstone. And then you pan back over to me, and I'm just like, and then the camera cut. Like that was my very first video. And I just was like, once I made that, I was like, I can do this.
And so you met somebody on TikTok. How that going? How's that going?
So two of the very first videos I posted, because, I have to give people background. My news channels, two of my local news channels here in Tampa, Fox and ABC, caught wind of my story because I was on Facebook before I was on Facebook. That was not my main platform through my pregnancy. And shortly after Danny Girl was born. And I was looking for someone to do a maternity shoot with, but it was a very special maternity shoot because I wanted Danny to be included. So I put a call out on Facebook, and I found someone, my photographer, and she was able to place Danny, like a blurred out ghost looking version, into my maternity photos. It was stunning. It was beautiful. And the news station saw it on Facebook, and they did news stories on me, a news segment. And so I put those segments on my TikTok channel, one of them, I believe. And a fellow widower found that segment. And one of the things that stuck out to him was when I said, I never knew a love like Danny and I existed. And I didn't. Like, I truly had the best friend, the husband, the teammate, the partner. And again, it sounds cliche, but when I tell you it's possible, like he was literally my best friend. He could roast me one moment and then turn around and throw me up on that kitchen island. I
Yeah.
had the whole package. You know what I mean? And before him, I didn't know. I didn't know you could really truly have that. So that stuck with this widower because he felt the same way about his wife who had passed from cancer. She beat it the first time, like whooped its ass. So when she was re-diagnosed, he thought the same thing was going to happen. And unfortunately, it didn't. But they had the same type of marriage Danny and I had. And so he started watching my content. And then a little while in, he actually commented. And I saw he commented, and I commented back. And then I was like, I'm a journalist. I want to know, like, who are these people? So I go and I, stalk his page, and I tell him this story. There's a photo of him and his wife. Obviously, that's his profile pic. So when I look on his page and I see him, I'm going to show you, I'm going to reenact my, what's going on. So I've got my mouse and I'm looking, click, click, click. And I'm like, oh, oh wait, he's a widow. Oh man, that sucks. Being a widower sucks. But in my mind, I'm like, oh, you look delicious. And you treated your wife like a queen? What? And you're a man, even though I'm like pissed at God, even to this day sometimes, and you're a man of God? Comment on my page again. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. So then I send him a DM. I jumped in his DMs, right? Thank you so much for your support and commenting and and oh wait, damn it. I'm really sorry about your wife, which I am. I'm like, that sucks. I know all about sucks, and I'm really sorry. And he just word vomits, right? I
He
mean,
okay. He texts like he's talking. Like when I get text from him, it's like I have to have enough time to read it. I'm like, I can't skim through a couple of words. I'm like, okay, when a text comes through, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have to come back to it because I know I need to respond in kind. You cannot respond okay.
I would ask a question, go to the bathroom, and I'd come back and there would be a novel, which I didn't mind.
I'm about to say because it's good to have a guy that can communicate
Oh
versus
my, yes.
yes,
Uh,
no, okay.
But I just, like you said, I had to, let me go eat a meal right quick because I wanted to concentrate. I wanted to be able to concentrate on the things he was telling me. And he was confiding, and before I knew it, like we were in each other's DMs like for hours at a time.
Have y'all met in person or was this just a virtual thing?
So at this point, it was virtual. And I was visiting my brother and his husband up north in New York around Christmas. And when we discovered that he lived so close, he was like, we should meet up. And I'm like, oh, because obviously through all this time we had been talking, we talked about where we stood on relationships and what, being widowed, how that, looked. And he told me from jump, he will never, ever
Ever,
be in another relationship ever again.
ever,
He
ever,
said
ever.
that. He said, I will never. And I was like,
But I'm
okay.
me.
This time I was like, okay. So anyway, what you're doing tomorrow? Like I just took it with like this small grain of salt, right? Because if you say so, we haven't met yet. So he's like, oh, maybe we should meet up. And in my mind, I'm like, you know, I'm like, okay, if you really want to, it's a 2-hour drive from where he lives in New Jersey to meet me in New York. And we made it happen. We
Oh,
met
he
at a
drove that
diner.
thing.
I later found out he said that he would be willing to drive just to give me a hug if we couldn't meet and turn back around and go home. I was like, oh, Mr. I will never, ever, ever. Yeah, okay.
Okay. So I'm just gonna leave it there. I can say this, you guys can check out her TikTok. They talk, they share, they've come out publicly in their relationship. But I know we this has been a long conversation. I want to ask you to speak to someone who is widowed, who is a widow, and feel like life is over, that they will never be happy again.
To be quite honest, sometimes even now, I feel like I will never reach the happiness that I had. And to that widow or widower who feels that way, I say, if you feel that way, that's okay. Feel that way. Don't fight anything that your grief is bringing you. Just try to make it a day at a time. And again, that's cliche, but there are some times where you feel like you're not going to make it to the next minute. So you don't always have time to think about whether you're going to be happy next week or next month, or you're going to be sad for the rest of your life. You're just trying to make it to through the next 60 seconds.
Hmm.
And before you know it, you make it through the next 120 seconds, the next hour, the next day, and you just keep going. And then one day you look up and you've laughed at a joke. And then you've showered. And then you've gone outside. And then you're talking to people. Like, I tried not to focus on so far in the future. I tried to, and my therapist also, she's like, you need to stay present. The future is scary. It's terrifying, especially now. I worry about my mortality constantly. It's frightening. I live alone with my toddler. I wonder what happens if I die in my sleep. She won't know what to do. And that's why my therapist grounds me in the present. So I say to our fellow widowers and widowers, if you feel like you're never going to be happy ever again, it's okay to feel that way. The future is scary. Just try to make it through the next day and see what happens. Because obviously we know nothing is promised to us. We don't know what the hell is going to happen. So we didn't know our spouse was going to die. So how do we know that one day we can't be happy again?
Mm,
You don't know. And don't worry about it. Just try to get tomorrow.
that is fair. When, thank you for that. When you thought about having this conversation, was there something particularly you wanted to cover or talk about that we maybe didn't discuss that you like to bring up?
I think you're good at this. That's why you do it. You drew out everything out of me that I wanted to say. Just make it.
Okay. Any questions to me?
Make. You're not really gonna bill me for the potty training, are you?
Ah,
That's it. Ugh.
okay. I will.
Actually, no. When are you coming back here?
I knew that was coming. I knew. I was. I thought. I was like, I'm over this. I'm over this. Probably next year. I know. Okay. So talk about. Okay. Okay. So since you brought up visits, what was it like when I came to visit you and your family and everything else? Let's just talk about that.
Oh hell, I knew I was gonna get murdered. I had never met you in my life. I even when we met in DC, I was
Oh yeah,
like,
we
this
got
was
to
a
talk
nice
about
little
that.
gathering.
Okay, so I'm coming to DC to visit one of my friends, and you go, "What are you doing?" I'm saying, "What am I doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'll talk to you later because I'm gonna be in DC." You're like, "What? Wait, no way!" And we're like, "Okay." Literally, where my girlfriend lived was in walking distance from where your brother lived. And I go, "Okay, well, I'll come visit you." And and your brother's going to my place. Like, what do we do?
Like, I don't need to be a part of your craziness, okay? One
Because
person dying is enough.
we literally met on TikTok from the person you're now dating. We were literally mutual friends. I was
Mhm.
already married at that point, but starting to support people. And what did you think about? Had you met him in person yet?
No,
I
because that
met
was
you.
one of the gripes.
I met you before he did in person. So what did you think about were you hesitant or what were the thoughts were you thinking like?
I was excited.
I
I
was
was
too.
very excited. I was like, I'm gonna meet another widow in person, and it's not at my house, so she can't kill me and leave me to die.
Another
Like, this
literally
is
Black Widow.
perfect. How weird would that be? The Black Widow gets killed? That's some shit. I was excited. I really was.
And she creeped up on me and scared me as I'm standing there thinking she's
I
coming
was
from
on
the
the
hood.
phone. We were on the phone. I was like, "Where are you? I don't see you." It was perfect.
Yes.
It was perfect. It was.
And then we hung out for a whole week. And it was like, that was cool.
Well, in DC, then that's when we planned the Tampa trip.
Oh yeah, because and it was sort of like, okay, we're gonna do this. And I
Mhm.
was like, but we really have to do it because at this point we did the video there in the
Yes.
hotel lobby.
That was our stepbrothers video.
Yes, and then it was like, "Okay, we have to do part 2 to this," and that was
Mhm.
great. That was
That was the
great.
cemetery video.
Yes, that was good. And then the build up to that, the getting ready, you came out
Yeah.
yeah, and there is laughter to be had with the tears. There is
Yeah.
laughter to be had with the tears, and I'm gonna say this, and then I'm gonna let you close out this conversation. No, you probably don't need to meet everybody you meet on the internet. Let's be very
Mhm.
clear about that. You need for people to know like their real name, their address, spend time getting to know
Mhm.
somebody, talk to them on Snapchat, something else. Don't be just giving everybody your phone number. Let me not give you this false sense of impression that I connect and meet in person with everybody I meet on internet.
Right.
That is not cool. But
Agreed.
just like anything else in life, using caution and preparing yourself and identifying. And for me, it's about praying and seeking this out and getting to know this person authentically. There will be some people you get to connect with. Case in point, in December, the first Saturday in December, we have an event called Surviving the Winter Holidays. That is an excellent way to come to the area where I'm at in Norfolk and meet people that you may have connected with on social media in a safe public space. Like you
Mhm.
said, not in your house, not doing this other different stuff. But
Mhm.
relationships can be real with people you meet online, given the right discretion. So
Mhm.
I am totally glad that we are for real friends.
Mhm.
And there are other people I have met when I was down there. We connected with another widow that I knew that I
Mhm.
met on Instagram. You have since met somebody else in person that we a
A
mutual
few.
TikTok.
Mhm.
That people are really going through something and something substantial can grow from what has been the most horrific moments of our life if we live on their love, which is something a widow, Rachel, that was at the dinner,
Mhm.
had said that she has learned to live on her husband's love. And I encourage people to find a way to do that. And I will let you give closing remarks to the conversation.
I thought I was going to be alone and miserable my whole life, the rest of my life, after my husband passed. And I surely didn't think I'd meet anybody that completely understood. It's like I had this false pretense that I was the only real widow in the world. Like no one else understood. But when I found my community, it's like I told you, the club sucks royally, but the members really do feel like my family. And this is across race, ethnicity, age, like across the board. And just knowing there are people out there who understand how I feel.
You had to say
And then,
age. Go ahead.
well, let me clarify, because when you think of a widow or a widower, seriously, you think of someone in that their 80s or their 70s who have lived their life already. And, you know, it's a natural part of life. You die at 90 or whatever. So even those widows and widowers have a hard time. It's across the board. So just knowing that I can jump on a platform or call you or,
Mm,
set up a meeting with someone who understands me, it's comforting. I mean, it's such a comforting thing. I mean, people want to tell you they're there for you and they understand and they're trying to be genuine. Nice try. I appreciate you trying. But our community is just stronger than I ever thought it could be. And there is laughter to be had and friendships to be made, new narratives to be written. And I'm grateful for that. I'm not so far gone that I can't recognize my blessings, and our widowhood community is one of them. The last thing I'll say, just to clarify, because I know he's going to watch this, I'm not sure that you and I met first. I don't know. Didn't we
I can't
call him when he
remember.
was in Israel?
I was there on the phone when he called
Right,
you. Right. When he was,
right.
so y'all meet before or after Israel?
I don't. I should know. He's going to be very upset. I think it was before Israel. We met before Israel
Okay. So
because
then
we were
you met him
very
before he,
excited. I did. Okay. Okay.
so I'm not scared about being in trouble, but, so when we met, we were in the hotel and he called from Israel and I answered your phone. And
Yes.
he was like, I think he was mad that I met you before I met him. That's what he was mad about.
But met where? It couldn't have been
No,
in
no, no.
person.
He was mad that he was mad that he introduced us together, but I
Mhm.
met you before meeting him in person.
That's right. Yes. Yes. Okay.
So
So
you had met him in person first,
friends. Okay.
but the fact that I met you in person before meeting him in
Him
person,
in person. Yes. Okay. Thank you
um,
for we had to clarify that. Sorry, honey.
but you needed help with that. But okay,
I did. Thank
I won't
you.
say
Bill me
meeting me
again.
was more monumental than meeting him.
Yikes. I'll let y'all.
Okay, now for your closing comments.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you for being there. And you are really the one that showed me there was more than my pain. You're the one that did that. That week of you staying at my house was literally just as therapeutic as when I checked myself into that mental hospital. It was. It really was. It was life changing. And I still remember that breakdown out of nowhere and you just held me in the kitchen for what seemed like forever. And I could feel the grief rising, and then it just fell off of me. And you did that. You did that. So I owe some of my ability to help other widows and widowers to you. And it really is paying it forward. It is. So thank you. And I love you. And thank you for not murdering me in my home.
I love you, see you.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune into Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.